Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to work on a reel that Ralph has brought to me. Actually, Ralph brought two reels to me. They're identical reels. These are the Avet SXJ 5.3 to 1. One of these works fine. The other one, quite a bit of noise inside. So we're going to try and diagnose what the problem is and hopefully fix the problem for Ralph. And there's no better way to get started than looking at the one that's problematic. We have a second one here. If we need to, one of the things that we can do is we can do parts swaps. That is, take a gear out of here and put it in here if we suspect it's a bad gear. And by process of elimination, we can generally find what the cause is, and if any parts need to be replaced, what those parts would be. Well, we're just going to get started using our own intuition. And if we need to, we'll do those swaps. Before I start taking pieces and parts off, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel, particularly if you like these kinds of videos, if you like to learn about fishing reels, if you like to understand how they're made, how they're used, who made them, when they made them, why they made them, and so on. That's kind of what I tried to cover in here, in addition to taking reels apart and showing you how to do the work yourself. Well, let's go see what we can do here. So the first thing I'm going to do is put this in free spool and spin. Very quiet, spinning as it should. Tells us that the bearings are okay. So that's not a bearing noise that's being made. Next thing we'll do is we'll take the side plate off in its entirety. And to do that, you want to remove the three screws that are holding the side plate on. And before I do any of this, I like to take a picture so that I know what's going on, where the pieces are, what the orientation of them is, and so on, so that when it comes time to reinstall, well, if I need some help, I can get some help by looking at those pictures. We'll examine the inside of the spool, but, well, that doesn't seem to have any issues there. And, well, there's one more screw here I don't want to lose, so let's take that off as well. I'm just going to set this aside for a moment. I'll give you an example of what we're going to do in terms of parts swaps with this next piece here. We're going to take the gear side off of the reel that's working fine, because what I want to do is eliminate the idea that it's the frame. Every now and then you'll get a bent frame that'll happen from torsion. These are not prone to that, but just because frames getting out of square can cause issues, well, no better place than to just take the pieces off here like we just did. Put this one in the other side, and here's where it's going to get a little testy because, well, we got the braid on the line. Now, it doesn't bother me that the braid stays on the reel when we service reels. People ask me, should I pull the braid off? And you don't have to, but you do need to take that into consideration when you're working on the reel. Sometimes there's some issues with getting trapped on install and the like. So what I'll do is I'll just put a rubber band on here. We'll put it back into this frame, and I probably should have marked the frames initially, but this one's got a lot of dirt underneath here. So I think I pretty much have figured out which one goes there. Okay, let's see if we can get this in. And once you set the pin in there, then you can line up your screws. I'm just going to hold it tight. Let's put it in gear. And no noise. So what we're going to say is we're going to eliminate the frame as the issue. Set that aside for a moment. Again, I want to make sure that I don't lose these screws. So what I do when I try to do part swaps and the like, I use a parts tray. I'm keeping the 3 screws from the original reel in the smaller tray, and any of the ones that are swapped reel parts I'm putting into the larger piece. So it looks like something has gone on here because that's unusual there. And I'm not sure what it is, but it seems to be like a sand or a salt or something like that is underneath there. I'm going to take a kitchen scrubby to start. It's got a little bit of rod and reel cleaner on there. That's doing a pretty good job. And again, we spun the reel already, so we know that the bearing should be okay. All right, let's go to the next part then. We want to remove the spool. To remove your spool now, just simply back off your preset adjuster. That goes into my parts tray. Remove your lever, and now the spool should back out of this side. Now again, I don't believe that that piece was in here. I think it's just as we took the reel off that braid wanted to go hide underneath. We'll do the same thing with this one that we did with the other. And when you take this off now, be aware you do have a spring, a small washer. Just going to lay that on there for now. And you have your setup. Now there's a lot of old dirt and debris and grease on here. We're going to clean that off. Looks like old oils. Check for any scarring, anything that might make that a difficult turn there. But again, we eliminated the bearings, so I'm not too concerned with that. Oil that bearing up, bring your assembly back in. You'll see it just popped out the bearing on the other side. That's okay. The small washer goes on. Oops, that was an oops. Before I can put that back in, there's a ferrule that goes on here. I'm going to put a little oil on that shaft. That's going to help the spool spin easier. Again, there wasn't an issue with that spool spinning. Bring the bearing side through. Ferrule goes on. Now we can put that second bearing in. If I didn't oil that already, we'll do that right now. And we have that bearing shield. And then we have the bearing spring. So make sure all that is properly set. The drag washer is in very good condition. You can see the cross hatching on it, so it's not an issue with that. Just going to grab a light brush. If you see any dirt and debris on there, this is the easiest way to fix that. Just pull it through, and that should get rid of any of the issues you might have there. We have one more of the little bearing washers that goes on top. And now we can turn our attention to the gear side. And there's something floating here, right there. It looks like it might be a piece of line or old dirt or something. So let's go ahead and take the rest of this off. This piece, I think, should come out. That's just your pressure plate. And underneath we can see a very dry piece. And although the spool bearings worked well, look at the bearing in the back here. This one is rusted. So my belief in why this reel has failed is that back bearing. So we'll continue. The next thing we want to do then is remove the handle so that we can remove the main bearing. To do that, you want to grab a Phillips head screwdriver. Now again, this one was a visual sighting to say it's the bearing. But if you didn't know that, if you had some questions about could it be the bearing, you would go to the next step by taking the other side plate stripping it down to leave only the bearing in that side, replacing these components in that side plate with that bearing, and that would tell you whether whether it's that issue or not. Okay, let's remove this. These reels are made in the U.S. Every now and then I get a question about what reels are made in the U.S. This is one of them. You have the Avet and Accurate. You have a very limited amount of pen reels in the international series that have been made in the U.S. And, well, a couple of, I'll call them boutique reels designed for specific markets. But overall, the reels that you'll find in most of the resellers and tackle shops and that are made abroad. Okay, 2 screws will release the tie-down cover for your anti-reverse. Take a picture here so that you know how it works. Notice that the cam for the main gear goes under a little slip knot there and over here. Now we should be able to push the main gear out. And let's see if we're stuck in here. Yeah, we're stuck. We have the pinion gear is stuck in the bearing. So that's what's making all of the noise right now. And, well, we'll just take a moment here. We're going to flush this down, see if we can't push this bearing out. So this is going to take a minute here. I'm just going to let the penetrating oil soak in, and we'll come back to that. In the meantime, what we'll do is take some of the parts that we've been accumulating on the side, clean these up. Let's take the swing arm off for your anti-reverse dog, and we'll hose down both sides of this with a penetrating oil. I do like to use the penetrating oil as a degreaser. Don't use it as a lubricant. I don't. Some folks do, but its viscosity just isn't there, and it will evaporate and be less useful over time. I'm going to use that hard brush that we were just using before here. Clean up the main gear, and I guess we'll just set that aside for a moment. Let's make sure we do the same on the pressure plate. This is the bearing that was driving the spool, and of course that was working just fine. This has a rubber seal on it, and oil can penetrate that seal, so if you like, extend your oiling to that part. And then we can see on the back here that there is evidence that that bearing is gone. That's one of the issues that you have with these reels, that the back case bearing does tend to fail. Well, I'm going to take that spool, and we'll go through there. And I'm going to see if we can rock that free. And then the other way to try and do this then is to kind of poke it from the other side. We're starting to get movement in the pinion gear. I noticed that came up a little bit with the poking. So now let's see if we can use a wedge on this side. Be very careful. These are the teeth for the gear here. I'm going to use the frame as a way to get clearance for this, and then I'm going to continue to use this. All right, we got it out. Okay, so we have the drive out now. Now we got to get that bearing out. So I have a bearing puller. I'm going to go get that at the moment, and well, just hang around. We'll shut this off. I'll get the bearing puller. We'll see what we can do. Well, I've had success in pulling the bearing, and it is the bearing as I test it. It's got a lot of noise and a lot of drag in it. How did I get that off? Boca Bearings makes a bearing puller kit. You want to select the arbor that's going to fit inside the bearing, like this one. And you can see that this is a split piece. It's split on two sides. You have a threaded post that comes through these, and as you tighten these, you'll notice that the arbor is going to expand. Eventually it will expand to the point where it's going to lock on that bearing, and then it enables you to rock it back and forth and pull it off. There's a lot of adjustment left in this one, but I thought I would show you that. Well, I've played around with the bearing. This definitely needs replacement. So the next step then is re-glove. I was having a hard time gripping with all that oil that I had sprayed on there. So we'll re-glove. We'll clean up the case here. And then we'll go search for that bearing. You can see all the debris in the back here from that rusted bearing. And this is a weak spot of the Avet reels. That top back bearing is a steel bearing, and it does tend to rust, and that will cause the issues. Okay, so let's put the pieces back here. Shut the camera off one more time. Wireless bearing. These have been tested. They're working fine. And we'll be right back. Well, while I was taking out bearings, I decided to check the primary bearing in the front of this case, and it too seems a little rough. So I went to my bearing chest. I pulled out the two bearing replacements. I've oiled them, and we're kind of back doing this now. So I'm going to put the sleeve that goes between the bearings and then the new bearing in the base of the case here. And when you replace the bearings, make sure that they are exact fits. You need to measure the internal diameter of the bearing, the external diameter of the bearing, and the height of the bearing. They need to match exactly, and that's what we have here. So this is the top bearing now, and just by taking the pinion gear, putting it in the old bearing and spinning it, and then taking the same and doing that to this one, you just feel how much smoother it is. So beyond doubt, these are the bearing, the issues with the reel. So we'll do the same thing. We'll press that top one back in the case. Make sure again that it is flush. You don't want to run that high. We can finish this up then and show you how the rest of the reel comes together, how to service that, and how to well, give this reel a second chance. All right, I'm going to take that glove, put that back on now, because we'll do a little bit of cleaning on this pinion gear. Again, I'm going to use the bristle brush to do this. And while I do, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel, if you'd like to leave those questions in the comment section, I will try to answer those for you. I do generally try to answer the questions in the mornings. So if you're leaving a question in the evening, don't expect a reply. I generally will have a cup of coffee, answer some questions, and then if I'm working on reels that day, I'll be in the shop. And chances are, if I'm in the shop, I'll be doing a video like this one. So again, I'll just encourage you to be patient and look for the responses generally in the morning. Okay, we've greased up that pinion gear, and we're good on that side. So let's go back here to the main gear assembly and set that anti-reverse as well. The main gear has been cleaned. I'm not sure, it's been a little while with all these other things we've been doing with this reel, like pulling bearings and that. Not sure if I showed you the cleaning on that, but we want to make sure now that we have a good amount of grease onto the main gear. And once we do, we can put a little bit on the back shaft too. Notice on this bearing that there is a washer on the back end side of this gear. We'll bring that in, bring that all the way through. And then we want to set our two pivot points here for that anti-reverse to the side. The anti-reverse is going to have an arm on it. Look for the one that has the point facing upwards it goes a hole on the bottom side, then it slides under the arm on here. And then down. That's about where it belongs in the case. That upside arm now attaches to the dog through the hole, and it attaches from underneath. Get that lined up. The next thing we want to do is to bring the cover over. The cover is not symmetrical, so look for the wide side of the cover. That's the downside. And we can bring this over. And those two flathead screws that we removed earlier when we removed the cover can be put back using either a micro driver, which I prefer for this, or a regular Phillips head screwdriver. Don't tighten that top one until you align the bottom of that cover. We can put the second one in. These gloves are great for keeping grease off of your hands, but unfortunately, they're not great for holding things. Okay, this is your anti-reverse setup then. And we can spin the reel as we're driving it, and as soon as you go to back pedal, it's going to pull that beak down. That's how that anti-reverse will work. When you go to load the rest of this onto the reel, make sure that you have the dog in the upside position, otherwise you won't clear this bracket here, which is the click ratchet. Bring that in, set it on. Make sure that the lower plate tucks in, and then go to your parts tray and get those 3 screws. Those are small Phillips head screws that will set in the case. When you use your tools, make sure that your tools match the threads or the gaps or the slots in your screws. Don't use an undersized tool. You'll risk flaring the sides of it. If that happens, well, chances are you won't be able to remove the screw the next time around, and that could spell disaster. Okay, so we're kind of moving along here. This next step can go either way. There is a washer that goes between the handle and that bearing. There's a slight rise or lip on it. That lip faces down. And we can bring our handle over. There is a washer here if you knock it off. Start your nut with your hands so that you don't cross strip that. And tighten that nut down fully. And then we have that little handle hold so that the nut cap doesn't go loose. Just slightly out of sync there. Okay, and then we have our 2 screws to finish that side. Those of you that watch the channel know me and these little small screws, well, we're not friends from time to time. They want to run and play hide and seek on me. And most of the time we can get it. Alright, we're almost at the point where we can reset this lever, give it a test, and see how we did on the surface of this reel. So what have we done so far? We showed you kind of a technique for process of elimination. We didn't carry it out all the way. We showed you how when you have the ability to have more than one reel, that you can swap pieces and parts along the way to improve your chances of diagnosing the issues. In this case, we found out pretty quickly it was the bearings. And, well, we didn't need to swap out other parts, but you could have if you had a gear noise or something like that. Inside the lever, you're going to notice that there is 3 ramps there, 3 valleys. They correspond with these little pieces. You want to take your lever to the free spool position when you go to reset. Sometimes this will pop out because it's not set completely, and you'll just need to move your rotor, your lever a little bit to make sure that you have that inset into the stationary hold below. With that in that side, tighten down on your adjuster. We should be in free spool, and this should spin nice and free and easy, which it does. And then bring it over, make sure that it stops. Bring it over to the far side, and we have a much quieter reel. There we go. Much better. Okay, bad bearings. That's the moral of the story here. We've showed you how to take care of that, how to service that, how to get that back fishing again. I hope you've enjoyed that. Before I leave, I want to thank our first responders, our police, fire, safety, and rescue, everybody involved in keeping us out of harm's way. I truly appreciate what it is you do day in and day out to help keep us safe and out of harm's way. Also want to thank everybody who's been watching. Thank you for your patience watching this, and I hope you've learned a little bit about lever drag fishing reels, the Avet SXJ reel, and well, how to determine what the problems are and how to solve those issues through a process of elimination. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody a great day.